Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Um, this is the Creativity 202 check in for April 9th, 2023. Got some returning guests, Jeff and Sunal, and a new friend who's Rad's taken the foundations course, and we just did a Q&A session earlier for an hour and suffered through that. So I said, as a payback, if you wanted to hang in and see what we do here, that would be super helpful. And there's usually a nice trade off or bleed over between the foundations course and creativity, because foundations kind of goes deep into the technical pieces, but it inevitably revisits our learning centers, which get activated by the creativity course, which then gets reinforced and nurtured and locked in by true storytelling. So no matter what you do, you end up getting caught in the middle of these two powerful forces for good, which is a point that I made at the University of Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago about maximum accelerated learning for the long haul. And I said, and I've been studying adult learning theory for 40 years and trying to do it, just so we could do it. I'm not studying it just because I want to know. I want to find out what works. As my daughters would say, you're going to F around and find out. They were shocked that I knew what that meant because I used it in context last night. They said, "Oh no, Dad, try to be cool." Yeah, I also told them that I understood the assignment, which is the other big meme that they like. So I actually want to know what works, what sticks in the classroom. There's a good book on that, what sticks. And what I found by far what works the best, and this is what I briefed a paper at Pittsburgh to the Association of Business Simulation and Experiential Learning, which is the original academic conference that 50 years ago invented, developed, refined, and pushed computer simulations for business schools around the world. That they were trying to teach people that their policies and choices have an impact. It has a payoff, and that you can predict what that is through the use of computer modeling and financial economics. So these guys invented that whole field, and over 50 years have turned that into a thing that is just, you wouldn't take a course without it. After 50 years, they've pretty much exhausted that entire field. And now it's just a question of which version do you want and how slick is the user interface and all that. And they're trying to reorient towards other forms of experiential learning in order to encompass things like non-financial variables in business models. Because not every investment decision or business decision that gets made is strictly on the basis of buying and selling their raw materials and products. They have to take into account corporate good citizenship, impact on the economy, Forex market impacts, war and peace, stakeholder analysis, taking care of the community, all that stuff. So we're trying to figure out how to do models. And one of the things that I was teaching them about was that our models have to account for these other non-financial members. So how do you learn about that fast? I said, here's what seems to work the fastest and the longest and the bestest in adult learning. It is the combination of three bodies of knowledge in one learning environment. The first and easiest body of knowledge is the thing that you're trying to learn. If I'm trying to be a mason, I have to learn how to stack bricks and make the glue, the mud, and how to hold the spatula. It's not a spatula, but it looks like one. So there's the technical body of knowledge that you're trying to learn. And everybody that takes workshops takes the workshop because it's their intention to learn that particular. You know something, I want to know it, so teach me what you know, those things, that voodoo that you do. And on that basis, for the last 5,000 years, we've been trying to model the sage on the stage and take what I know, put it on the end of a sharp spear, and stick it into your head so that it sticks. And now I can test you on what's stuck, and now you can pass the test. That's the traditional lecture model. Well, we know that that may not be the best way to learn how to actually do things. And so you got to go to the laboratory and mix the chemicals without blowing up. You got to dissect a frog. You got to build a sample wall so that if it falls, it doesn't kill anybody. So there, in the trades, especially, there is a respect for craft knowledge, the doing of things. And in soccer, the ball teaches the best. The game is the best teacher. So we want to have respect for that experiential component. Well, what's the best trade-off between theory and practice? And how do I incorporate expert knowledge into that? Do I just give you the book and then you monkey around and you try it? Is there some relationship between teacher and student that can increase the speed and efficiency of learning? The martial arts and all the trades understand that, and they require the higher degrees of expertise to become teachers in order to remember what it's like to learn and then see the basic lessons in a new way to see if there's a way to improve it. So by cultivating beginner's mind and childlike wonder, you get reconnected to the foundational fundamentals of whatever it is that you are in some degree of mastery of, right? So experiential learning is now a thing. How do I mix theory and practice? How do I incorporate the teacher? Well, the other two bodies of knowledge then that I add to this triad of maximum sustainable rate of learning or accelerated learning is first the story science of Angus Fletcher for creativity, which is like going to the gym to build muscles on the machine and lifting weights to increase your fitness, increase your strength, your capacity to do work later on the things that you're actually wanting to work on. And that means like I may want to lift a bag of feed into the back of my truck. So when I go into the gym, I do the deadlift or the clean and jerk or push the thing up a inclined plane, push the sled, flip the tire. And what I'm doing is I'm doing some efficient, effective exercise that builds my capacity to then go do the work that I want to do. Like I can't bring cows into the gym and lift cows. I got to do. So there may be ways that we can use training exercises in order to build the capacity for the thing that we're trying to train for. So it turns out that to improve the creativity, the energy that comes with it, and the perspectives that come from creativity, that the use of short stories and reflective learning exercises in different domains than the one you're working in turns out to be the fastest way and the bestest way that we found so far to raise your level of creativity as measured by experts in the field. And it's funny because story science is connected to the way that our brains learned in the 10 million years of evolution prior to written language that caused us to become the top of the food chain. That the ability to express what we had learned on the hunt or on the search, we could now communicate in a story and other people could grasp it quickly because we had learned to become tribal and to have empathy, and that oxytocin, which is the chemical that is released when we make social connections, is a very pleasurable experience. And that makes the lessons that are learned when we're being empathetic and telling stories to lock in and become very memorable. And thus the wisdom of the tribe was preserved. It's why the bond between mothers and babies is so strong. But it also is the foundation of our social environment. The net effect of modern living, and in the extreme case, COVID, breaks those normal physical, biological, social bonds and makes it harder to feel connected, which is why kids are failing to read at grade level across America in a epidemic proportions. It's the least surprising result of all. That's what happens when you shut it down. So, Creativity Science, Story Science by Fletcher is a way to read these little events from different domains, which frees your mind because you're not trying to bring your personal experience into it and then interpret it your own way. Right? No, you're just trying to live in a different area altogether, and you're open with wide eyes and wonderment. That story, and that makes me think in a different way, and how do I feel, and answer the reflective learning questions. And in a matter of 10 minutes to 50 minutes, you get this extraordinary burst of creativity. You start doing that habitually and log that into your reflective learning journal, and you are accumulating all of these multiple points of view that will enable you to bring new resources to bear on the typical thorny problems that stump you when you try to handle it in the old way. You just shift position on it and see what it looks like on the other side. Go get that little 3D folding dragon exercise. It looks like a dragon. It's just a paper that was folded, and when you walk around the dragon, it's a different thing until you get past the side and you realize it's just a little cardboard cutout. It's the greatest optical illusion you ever saw. I'll send you a link later, but it's funny as heck. And it proves how powerful our visual cortex is. And no matter how many times you see that, and no matter how many times you do that, the visceral shock you get when you realize that that's not really a dragon looking at you, but just a little piece of paper folded, you cannot not feel that. That's what happens when you use the Fletcher creativity and these different stories. I've never told that story exactly in the same way. And the next thing I do after we get done here is I'm going to send that note and exercise to Fletcher, and I'm going to add it to the course. So, boom, just proof of principle right there. Storytelling leads to aha moments that become emotionally connected. I'll never forget that story of the time I remembered the dragon folding, the blah, blah, blah. So that's the second body of knowledge. Remember, there were three, the rule of threes. The thing you're trying to learn, the story science of Fletcher to raise the creativity, and now I got all this capacity to work, and now I come and tell somebody about it. I'm going to now use David Boge's true storytelling science, art, to build a safe, trusted, truthful, collaborative learning space in which we exchange the aha moments that we individually experienced about the technical trading lesson and the creative science. And in the telling, we thought we knew something about what we learned because we had an aha moment. And we tell a true story about it. But instead, we get the gift of all the other stories of people who were in the same position and got these wildly different reactions. And then we realize just how many different ways there are to respond to circumstances. And we learn those lessons empathetically because we are connected at a human level as a learning tribe. And that emotional feeling of gratitude and forgiveness for ourselves and each other allows us to lock in those stories, and it makes us eager to get back here each week, and it binds ourselves to this continuous learning process. And that's the third piece of this magical triangle, and that is that this is what gives you the enthusiasm to keep going when it gets hard, to do the grind, because you create a sense of obligation with each other on the basis of shared truths and excitement about what else it is you're going to hear, and just the sheer joy of being with your friends and tribal members in a world that makes it hard to find genuine people who are eager to help you selflessly, because they know that by doing that, they actually get a big payoff, and that they're going to be helped tenfold by the true stories that you tell. So when you put those three things together, the technical content, the creativity story science of Fletcher, and the true storytelling art of collaboration and genuine honesty in the world, you get transformational learning it just happens and you can't even help it. You couldn't stop it if you tried. That's what I briefed to the people at University of Pennsylvania. And in less time than it took me to tell you this story, I gave them an experiential learning exercise from scratch to teach them the magic words of safety, trust, truth, and opportunity that I use with my 5-year-old soccer kids. And they were so persuaded by that that I had 3 command performances to redo that for other people in the conference that hadn't gotten it. And they decided to move out for the next 50 years on the basis of that formula for transformation, because they are recognizing that the day of the computer simulation for financial modeling is over, and it becomes all of these other things that they have to figure out how to do in order to maximize experiential learning with their models and their teaching and their in-class and out-of-class behavior. So I say all that simply to say that's my check-in, and everything is good here in Kansas, and that was my work in progress this week. So I feel like I've already told my story, so you won't have to listen to that crap again. And so because my story is over, I'm going to hit the tones and say aho, and I'm going to go around and invite you to just introduce yourself in 10 seconds. How are things going? Then we'll go into the story circle and then exchange the true stories in the usual way. So I'm just going to hit the abbreviated tone to announce that Ernie, you're on deck.
Good morning and good afternoon. It's good to have you guys back. I do feel like I already felt like it was Christmas rather than Easter, because I spent most of the night listening to the Friday night podcast, which was amazing. And that I did feel like that was a Christmas gift. So I'm trying to recover from that. And it's good to be with everyone. Good to see you. And I'm looking forward to today's lesson. Aho.
Sunal, how are you doing?
Outstanding. I love being back to the family. So massive hugs. And I love that we've messed with your head. It isn't Easter, it's Christmas. It's all good. Sunny here. And yeah, excited to meet some new people as well. So all good here.
Jeff, what's going on?
All good. It's the sun's out here in London, which is nice. It's got a bit warmer. Things are good. It's been a very busy time for us, and we've taken a little bit of time out seeing some friends this weekend, and yeah, just got back here only about an hour before we kicked off, and we thought, okay, yeah, cool. Now we get to see some other friends. So, Ernie, great to see you. Chung Long, looking a bit furrier than I remember last time around, but all good. And Jeff and Rad, nice to meet you guys. And Ken, always great to see you. So yeah, all good here in London.
Cool. Jeff Southern, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, we're here in the southern part of the United States. We're hanging on to the London weather. We've got low clouds and it's been raining. It varies from torrential rain to just misty, constant rain, and then back and forth. So yeah, I can't brag about our weather here, although it is fairly warm. But yeah, Ken, I have an old shoulder injury, right shoulder, that I manage really successfully 99% of the time. But the challenge of hotel beds and air travel, I made an emergency call Friday to bring a person in on Saturday morning during Easter weekend to where I met him yesterday after our little meeting. But I woke up this morning much improved with a strange desire to send that person more money. A good night's sleep and lack of pain is worth more than you think, so it's all
really is.
in Louisiana.
Well, shoulders especially if you're a side sleeper. Ooh.
Right.
And my dog likes to cuddle with me, and so it puts my arm in a weird position sometimes. So I normally use the 1-pound Indian clubs and rotational to keep the range of motion going, but I just overdid it throwing that stupid soccer ball. But man, Chunlong Lee, the furry lynx. How are we doing, sir?
Good morning, good afternoon. This is Canada Lynx.
I recognize him.
Yeah, I feel I need a treating spiritual animal. So yesterday, finally, I said, okay, what AI will say about that animal? This is the AI generated the lynx. That's me.
Yep.
I hope.
They are clever. I mean, that's about 40 to 50 pounds of clever hunting cat. There's something else, boy. We have some here in Kansas, and they are a sight to behold. It's hard to see them, but when you do, you never forget. And Red, how do you like to go by?
Oh, okay, so hi, I'm Brad, a software engineer from Europe. I have started the foundation course like last week, so new on board. And it's really awesome to meet you guys live because like I have been watching you for some time already, and I feel like I already know you. And also thank you to Joe Boccaccio because I kind of found the foundation course via your podcast in Chat with Traders, as I remember. So this is how I landed in like Ken's. Thank you.
We proved that could actually make a connection, so all is well. Everything after this is gravy. Awesome. And for Jeff, B, yeah. So I'm going to do the Alpha Mind guys next Friday. So my funny story before we get in is I was investigating Chat GPT in version 4 in AI, and they asked me if I could talk a little bit about managing fear and greed. So I asked Chat GPT 4 and Koala Writer, which is my little software that sits on top of GPT 4, and it writes in an SEO friendly way and connects to Google and Yahoo and YouTube and Amazon live search trends. Yeah. So I got that thing to help me write. And I said, well, hey, I asked it, what does Ken Long teach about managing fear and greed?
Right.
Nope. And said, no plagiarism, blah, blah, blah. 2 minutes later, I had a 2,000 word article ready for publication that identified my top 5 ideas, including the compound critical state, which I've only written about for maybe 5 or 6 weeks. And it gave me my show notes because I have those 5 and I have a couple other points I'm going to make. And I sent that off to them and say, hey, just for grins, here's the show notes. And they said, oh, man, I guess we're just going to push the button and launch. Yeah, I said, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen if I know myself at all. You know,
Good.
so
I was wondering when that was going to happen. I thought it was
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah, well, we had they had some U.S. travel back and forth, and yeah, and for some reason my mic wasn't working well when we did the first, coordination. So, but yeah, we're gonna do that. I think this next Friday during the day. So
Cool.
I'm looking forward to that. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, glad
So
to hear it.
yeah, so there we go. And let me find my little sticker. So this will move us into the sacred circle, and Rad, you are invited to tell a true story about whatever happened that was the most interesting or aha or surprise from this week in the course or out of the course, just what's going on. You don't have to. You're invited to. We'll ask your permission to share it if you do. If you would rather not share it, that's fine. Or ask me to cut it later, I will. But you're invited to participate if you feel like it. And the one thing you can count on is that nobody's going to judge you, advise you, critique you, recommend anything. We're just here to listen to true stories because it makes us feel good and makes us better people. So very cynical and selfish in that sense. But we give back a true story, so it all evens out in the end. Irony off, sarcasm off. So here we go into the sacred circle. Whoop. Sorry. I realized I didn't have the tone on. There we go. So, Jeff Southern. Oh, one half a second. Let me try to get the little AI note taker. That thing is pretty cool. I should have had it on already. I've been experimenting with the AI anyway, and Zoom has an AI note taker that does timestamps and summaries that are crazy good. Crazy good. More about that later. And Jeff Southern.
Hello, everyone. Rad, welcome. I was just thinking when you joined us that how amazing it would have been if I had had this group to support me and this body of knowledge 30 years ago when I started trading. How amazing that would have been. So my advice to my younger self, if I was just enrolling in this course, is stay the course and keep the faith, because you're in the right place. This is a rare place in the trading community, but this is the right place. So welcome. My word of the week last week was hands. I didn't really know why, but now I obviously do. I think it was a harbinger of the amount of work that I needed to do this week. If the knowledge of the hands is how to get things done, that word probably got me through the week. So just an interesting travel, or I'll take you along on my journey this week. We're working on lesson 7, the idea of logical thinking versus creativity. Exercise 1 was to revisit a favorite narrative, novel, film, or history. And uncharacteristically for me, I chose a movie. Normally, I'm more attracted to written stories, but I do love a good movie. So somehow I came up with this movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Interestingly enough, it's set in New Orleans, Louisiana. The opening scene is right as Hurricane Katrina is bearing down on New Orleans in 2005. And as you guys know, it did massive amounts of damage, basically just destroyed the city. But the story's told by an elderly lady who is literally on her deathbed at that moment as Hurricane Katrina is hitting the coast of Louisiana. And it starts in 2005, but the story covers the period from 1918 all the way back up to 2005. It's a very unique and creative story. It talks about a blind clockmaker, like someone who's visually impaired. And that's an interesting concept, that you would hire a visually impaired person to build like the most ornate master clock for this railway station. And it also talks about the idea of a child born as an old man. So at birth, he was defective, or so they thought. He had a condition to where he looked like he was 85 years old. He had all the physical problems of a person that was just about to die. And then throughout the story, he actually gets younger with the passing years. So it's a very unique story. If you have any interest in that kind of thing, I think it's worth watching. I'm not going to talk about the other exercises. They were great. And well, I will a little bit. So it asks you to write stories about your life. The first part, just stick to the facts. How'd you get to where you are? And then imagine various futures. So I actually I wrote 4 stories. So the first story was where I'm at now, just the facts, where I was born, how I got here, what happened. And then I realized, so it brought this image up of me on my path of life. And let's just say maybe I got halfway up the mountain so far, and I'm at another crossroads, right? There's always a crossroads. So, or not a crossroads, but there's a fork in the road. So I'm sitting here looking at these 2 choices. Which way do I go? And you always have the metaphor of the smooth, easy, well-traveled route versus the other path I imagine to be, dark and scary and rocky and wet and just all the misery you can imagine. But the theory is that that's the one you take, because by overcoming all those challenges, that's the one that gets you to the top of the mountain. We don't know for sure where the easy road goes. But so I was thinking, well, you have two choices, but then I thought, no, you have three choices, because you don't have to, you can just stay here at this crossroads, right? There's enough stuff here to survive. And then I thought, no, you have four choices, because you could turn around and go back the way you came. So I explored those four choices by writing four stories, one of how I got to where I am. The second idea is, what if I just went back down the road that I've traveled to some place in my memory that I think might be happier or better in some way than where I am now. And then the third story is to take the well-traveled status quo path and just do enough and just be the same as everybody else. And I explored where that would lead. And then the best story for me was take the dark, scary path. You're probably going to get hurt along the way, but you'll probably survive. It's wet, it's miserable. You're not going to meet many people on that path because nobody takes it. But that ended up being like a superhero story, right? So if you're willing to do that, there's no telling what you can accomplish. So that was really my work. The good stuff that got generated out of lesson 7 is in that. The trader's exercise was a good one. And it kind of ties in. I'm not going to go to the details of that. I'll take you back to my work in progress, which was, I got stuck. I've probably been stuck on this for years, but I got stuck a little bit last week on the populating my inner circle or mastermind circle, and like identifying all the actors that appear during my trading and what they do and why they're there. And I've done this many times in the past. You just put a name on this thing, and you intellectually or from your head, you just put in the answers you think are right. But I didn't feel like that was enough. So that was my work in progress last week, was to explore that, because I realized that I resisted that for years, even back the first time that Dr. Tharp brought up the concept of having different parts and getting them to work together. So I had a breakthrough this week in that area. And the breakthrough was, as a businessman, how do I resolve this problem? It just stuck with me all week. But in the past, I just tried to take actors that had been in my life for years and repurpose them, right? So I tried to take the pilot part of me and say, okay, now you're going to be the trader. You're going to execute the trades. And I took all these actors that I've had forever and tried to repurpose them. Well, they didn't want new jobs, they resisted. So I thought, well, if these guys won't cooperate, I'll just hire new guys, because I've borrowed Ken's guys for a long time. The fireman and the sniper and all these guys. And I thought, well, they want a job, so I'm just going to hire those guys because they've been with me for a couple of months in training, and they're ready to go. And there's no resistance from these guys. They want the job. So that's how I solved that problem and populated and took care of that whole thing and got rid of all that resistance. So I now have, and another, just a note for Ken. So for some reason, Ken talks about his 5x8 cards, and that used to be my go-to thing in aviation. I was flying multiple aircraft, so we had these cards, and I used them a lot. And then probably because someone told me I should get into the modern times or whatever, I abandoned. I also do have, though, and they still make fun of me for this. This is like my journal. It's my whole life in here. All the important things to me end up in here, and there's usually one of these journals a year. And I was sitting in a business meeting in Denver, and everybody is taking notes on their computers and some of them on iPads, and I'm still writing mine out by hand. But for me, there's value added by writing it down and rereading it. And then I'm not happy with then I kind of sort through it, and it gets rewritten and reread many times until it's in its final distilled form that I want to record and preserve for the future. And then it goes in this black book. This is like the book of wisdom and my schedule and all the important stuff in my life. And my phone has crashed, but this thing has never failed me. Like, it's always there, day or night. The batteries don't run down. So I ended up, as I walked out the door, Ken, Amazon had delivered this big pack of 5x8 cards, and I was looking for some paper to take with me to this business meeting in Denver. So I just ripped the package open and grabbed a handful of these cards. And it's amazing. I like the tactile feel of them. They feel more permanent than a piece of paper, which often gets torn. Or if you spill something on a piece of paper, it doesn't, this just seems good. And it also is the exact same size as my journal. So I can slide like 10 or 15 of these in there. So I think I'm going to adopt your 5x8 card. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is my little sketch. Nah, it's not going to focus on it. I can send it to you, but I'm not the artist that Ken is, but I found an online sketch that just perfectly, I was in the hotel room the other night trying to synthesize what happened in the business meeting, and online I found this sketch that kind of perfectly fit the mental image of my dojo or base camp space where I want to do my work, where I want to have my mastermind meetings and do my learning, and also have my planning meetings with my trader parts. So turns out it was a $9 image. So I paid the person $9 for their beautiful pencil sketch, and now it's mine to use. So that was how I completed my work last week. I've also been thinking all week about the life cycles. Started thinking about the seasonality that Ken talks about, because random moments during the week, I'm always thinking about trading, right? When there's nothing more important to think about, my mind goes back to thinking about trading. So thinking about the life cycles of the symbol, the seasonality of it, and then really figuring out what I needed to think about was the seasonality of my own energetic and psychological state. Like, your energy levels fluctuate up and down, just like the MACD line. My attention span and my focus has that same sort of natural rhythm, and trying to wonder if there's an optimal time for me to do my best work. And I think there is. For me, it's early in the morning, because I start out full of energy, focus, and dedication, and then it just seems like that battery starts draining out as the day goes on. I know people that claim they do their best work like late in the night or whatever, but for me, I think it's that first 4 hours of the day probably when my best work gets done. And so my work in progress right now, I just got back from a 3-day business meeting in Denver. And I came home wondering, in many different ways in my life, how do I best manage change? So when we learn and grow, that's good. Our perceptions and perspectives change, our beliefs change, our realities actually begin to change. And growth is good and change is good, but it also creates instability. So growth provides increased performance, but it usually reduces the stability. It creates new feelings about old things. So that's kind of, that whole mental entanglement is kind of where I'm at right now. How do I get back to stability and performance without killing innovation? I want to change and grow, but I also want to remain somewhat stable in my performance. So I'll tell you guys, I'll just wrap with this. So I have a line of business. So my work in progress is to create a strategy to best manage my personal and professional change. I have a line of business that is in a compound critical state. And associating that meeting that I had and the business that we do in that particular area with trading, we entered this trade 23 years ago on a 1, 2, 3 entry, right? It was the maximum point of uncertainty. Nobody thought it would work. And it's been a very profitable line of business for us for 23 years. And the first 3 legs up of the business were just remarkable, but everybody started to see what we were doing and how it was working, and they just started piling into the trade. So we had about a 10 sigma move down, and at the peak of of our participation, we probably had about 15 units of risk, and we managed that really well. We cut that almost in half. Well, more than in half. We cut it back to 7. And we suffered some of the up and down moves, and we had another 2011 was the peak of the trade. And then it just the momentum was gone. The trade was crowded, and the thing just started kind of rolling over. So we cut back to 7 units of risk, still profitable. And then in 2018, we had an uptick. It looked like the start of another measured move up, right? But everybody just piled onto this thing, and so we took profits there, and we cut back to 4 units of risk. And there's been no performance since 2018, so I'm at the end of this trade thinking maybe it's time just to get out and go look for something else to do, right? But during this meeting, there's a bunch of people in this meeting that are just they're buying the dip with no stop. They're convinced that we make, this is just such a great thing that they're all in with no exit strategy. And that that contrast between my plan and theirs was so startling. Like we weren't even that bold in the beginning, or at any point in the trade were we never that bold that we were all in. We were probably 35% in at the peak. And it's been a multi-million-dollar business over the years, but I think it's in a compound critical state right now. Like it could go either way. So we're prepared for that. We really don't want it. We would like to see another 20-year leg up, but if not, it's not going to be the end of us. It's not going to be fun, but we'll exit the trade and we'll go do something else. So I think that's pretty much what I got for the week in my rambling way. But yeah, my work in progress is to create a strategy to best manage all of this change in a productive way that preserves my psychological capital and hopefully carries me forward into the future. So I hope.
Junlong.
Hello. First of all, welcome, Rob. This is a really fantastic group. And secondly, I really miss you, Sonel and Jeff. Finally, you come back. Welcome. My word of last week is reframe. I think that means I need to make some changes regarding my life and my trading. So for the week, how to think what need to be changed, how to make the change, and more importantly, why I need the changes. For the week, I think I did 2 changes. The first change, I like to work on the treadmill to get some exercise. Normally, I will watch a movie because, it's really boring. Slowly work on the treadmill. So last week, I tried to watch some Ken's recording, the podcast, and some other stuff. That's one change. The other changes I made is finally I come back to trade live 1 share. I did the thing, use a $20 risk last year, November. Didn't get the result I wanted. And then I reduced my risk to $5. Didn't get the result I wanted. So it take 3 months, 4 months now, get me back to trade 1 share now. So this time I feel really, probably just because the risk is so small. I feel really easy, feel really patient to with the pattern develop, and feel easy to cut my loss at 1 hour. I made some really good trade, but because the one share for the smaller MMRV, 10 cents. So my one-way commission is 3 hour now, 35 cents. The round trip will be 70 cents US dollar, roughly $1 Canadian. I feel really good about that because I frame that as I play my game, $1 per game. That's how I frame that trade. So that's some change I made. Yeah, I like it. The one share. Finally get the point. One share is a year ago, I heard can recommend one share trading, never buy it. So this is the time. Okay. So today's lesson, I read that for today's lesson is the second round, but I take more time to read that lesson again and again, just thinking about the two smarts. I'm an engineer, educated engineer, and grew up in a non-religious country. So it's hard for me. I just realized that there's my education, my background, my working background is the barrier to develop the second smarts, storytelling, plotting, thinking, all those things. So I read the lesson again and again. My thoughts go away, just fight with myself. Sometimes there's a figure of my friends. My friend says, this is not logical. This is not scientific. What you said is not scientific. That's wrong. So I fight in my mind with that figure to try to figure out, how to go further to develop, the storytelling, plotting. I just saw that the whole morning, 3 hours. Didn't get much to do the exercise. I read the exercise, come back to the lesson, try to understand, what this creativity developing technique or, whatever it is, how do I go further? So this time I will probably go slower than last time. Last time what I did, every lesson I write a lesson summary, develop some key point. Now this time I even didn't finish the exercise, but that's okay for me. Just change the way I'm thinking. Get less critical, less scientific, focus less on the engineering part of me. That's the lesson. So next week I will continue my one share trading, try to develop a daily routine. Actually, I asked AI to write a daily routine for me. That's a kind of interesting last week. The other thing, I continue my L7c kata, use the simulation. It's really hard for me. It's difficult for me to stick with my plan. So let's say my plan is to trade the L7c only to the world. Literally, the harsh winter have to be there. But it's difficult for me. I see the other pattern. I see the chance I take out the trade. But that's not in my plan. So I have to practice, stick to my plan, not jump to the trade of whatever pattern I saw. So by doing that, I really understand how the SSC developed. The SSC develop into Kata 2 or develop into the collapsing dragon. It's a helpful, slower, but effective. What I did last week. Yeah, I really like the 2 podcasts Ken did Friday. That's a 2 long one. It take double the time to watch the podcast. Really helpful for me, I learned all those stuff last year. For the first 3 months I joined in the program. Now it's a good time to review that in 1 hour. For me, it's a 2 hour per hour. That's it. I hope.
Ernie, I don't know how you're going to follow those 2, but good luck.
Thank you. I was thinking the same thing. Let me make my meager attempt. The lesson for today was we have our brain is 2 kinds of smarts, and there are 2 types of intelligence, and I hope that we discover more in the future. I'm fascinated with what's happening today in the world of artificial intelligence. I like going through the YouTube and watching what people are doing with it, and it's amazing. And I know AI is based on logic, which is the ability to perform evidence-based reasoning. And that evidence is comprised of facts, and facts can be numbers that can be calculated, or words and sentences that can be interpreted and expressed. And my favorite is the second kind of smarts, plotting and thinking in story. So, and you've seen some of the TikTok videos, with mom walking into the kitchen, and then there's the child holding a knife and there's a cake on the table and there's a piece missing, and the kid's got chocolate and crumbs on her face. And when mom walks in, she looks at the dog and points to the dog. The brain's really working even in that young of an age, when they're just so little. And I think the kids are so amazing, and it's always my favorite thing to see when they get in trouble like that and how they can get out of it. And I know we've learned that we can train our brains by thinking in story. And I remember when I was just a little guy that I was trying to learn how to tie a tie, and that I was being taught, that it involves when you're tying your tie, you're thinking of the rabbit being chased by a fox, and the rabbit runs around a tree, under a branch, over a log, and then through the hole. And now your tie is tied and it works. So there was a story to it, and the story really helped enforce the learning. And so I just thought that was it. Just reading the lesson just made me think about how I learned how to tie a tie, and I think I try to apply the stories to how I live my life, and basically my life has been a great story, and that's kind of a neat thing. So last night, when my wife went to bed, usually I'll start watching YouTube and stuff like that. And Ken's podcast was on there from Friday night. And so I started watching that. And then all of a sudden that I'm, 10 o'clock at night, and now I have to look for a pen and paper because everything that's going on, and it's like, this is not a normal podcast. So I'm going to have to watch it again, and I'll be ready for it this time. It's really neat whenever Ken does that, and he does it quite often. I'm sitting down expecting one thing, and all of a sudden it's something else. And so I was really seeing the podcast as a tremendous resource for the logic side of my brain. I think that Ken does that quite a bit. He was going over the daily report, and there are so many facts and data that's presented, and that from the day, and that he puts it together, and I find it to be it really speaks to me, I guess, is the best way I can say it. And over the years that I've been using that, I think I get a comfort to it in the way that he presents it, and I look forward to seeing it. And it's evolved over the years, and it's a real resource for my planning and preparation. And then I execute based on what I've seen, and then after that I use other tools that Ken has helped with, and I can do my assessment. And then once I finish that, I start the circle all over again. And it's been a great experience. And last night I did feel like this was Christmas, and that I'd really gotten a great present. And so I really, once again, I thank Ken for what he had done. I wanted to tell you about my work in progress. It's the Kata 2 challenge, and I'm really trying to do those basic 3 things: the supported spring crossing, the collapsing dragon, and the Kata 2. It's been great, but one of the things that I find myself doing is that I start slipping into trying to do other things, and I just need to stay with what I'm doing and not get sidetracked. And my word will be continue, but I've got to add slowly, carefully, steadily. Don't go to step 3 before I complete step 2. I'm terrible about glossing over the foundation. You don't see the foundation. I used to work in construction when I was in high school and everything. And that was the important thing is if you don't have the foundation, then everything else you've done just crumbles. So I have to remember to complete step 2 before jumping into step 3. Finish what I start. Be aware of the foundation and how important it is to the structure that I'm trying to create. So that's going to be my work in progress. I hope that I slow down and do what I'm trying to do and do it right. Aho.
Jeff.
All right. Prepare for ramble as I try to navigate whatever's going on in the head up here. The first thing that comes to mind, and this will probably be similar from the first time we ran through this Creativity 202 exercise, but when looking at the lesson itself, right? The thing that obviously comes to mind when I kind of review is is, it's those two types of intelligence or smarts, that the lesson kind of goes through. And I always find it funny because we all know that we've all got elements of both, but we might slant to one side or the other, right? And if you're looking at the two of us, I am going to be the guy that's slanting onto the logical side, and Sonal's probably the one who slants onto the I'm going to call it the emotional intelligence side, or the
The emotional side.
Oi, I've got the stick. Yeah. um, or the other side. Let's call it the other side. Um, but of course we've all got both, right? And I think you can't really exist. You can exist. You can't. I was going to say flourish, but what I want to say, I think, is, by making use of both types is kind of where the extra special juice comes from, in a way, right? So I think that we need, I can be very logical and that sort of thing, but the quantum leaps in progress, from my point of view, or when I get those flashes of inspiration that come out of left field, which is coming from the other side altogether. So yeah, I find it super fascinating. As I think about this for both of us, and if I relay it into, say, like, works in progress, my work in progress. In fact, no, let me take Saul's work in progress, which she's probably going to talk about and might yell at me about in a second. Is a deep dive into what's going on between the ears here, right? Into the sort of the psychology, but by doing so, looking very specific at certain techniques that are available, and by this I'm meaning like cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, not the natural language processing one, which is the more logical AI sort of piece to that. But so, what do we say to ourselves, and almost the self-programming side of things. And she's been doing this deep dive into this, and telling me a lot about it, of course, which is just super fascinating. And the whole aim of this deep dive is, of course, the introspection, and then how can we use this to improve. But it's really the idea of it's a practical side of identifying root causes of certain behaviors that we find ourselves having, specifically with regards to trading. I mean, it could be in anything, but we're applying everything sort of to trading in this context. I'm talking about things like taking exits early, like I would probably do, taking profits early, right? Or moving stops, or not respecting stops, or that sort of thing. And then coming back to, well, let's see if we can figure out why that's actually happening. So rather than discipline our asses off, right, and sort of slap ourselves on the wrist and stop ourselves doing that, let's figure out what's the underlying kind of cause, and root it out and get rid of it and replace it with some better stuff, and then just stop the behavior happening. So it was interesting when one of the first things Ken said today, I had to write down, was the fastest, longest, bestest. And I was kind of thinking about that in these terms of fastest being, we just kind of want to get to the root of the problem fast. We want to fix it and make it the longest lasting. And of course, it being the bestest, or the best solution, for this sort of thing. So anyway, I've gotten off track. As I said, prepare for ramble. Sonal will maybe talk about this stuff a little bit more. But super interesting stuff that I think is going to be very applicable to all of us, and sort of just traders in general. And actually turning it into a practical technique that you can actually use and implement, and it's a tool, and now it's there, and now we'll move on to the next thing. So anyway, so that's on that side. If I look at my own work in progress, I've been tied up with, well, we did our second PRX course, like workshop. So that always takes up a whole bunch of time. That's kind of like a system that takes up a bunch of time. Ernie's familiar with it, right? And it's super fun. It's just, respect to Ken for how he pulls off as much as he does, because even with a simple workshop like this, it's just, yeah, it takes a bunch of work and it takes a lot out of you, right? So that's been going on. And then once that finished, which is like 2 weeks back, the next thing on my sort of docket, the next biggest thing that's kind of scheduled in is I got thrown under the bus from the STA to organize a conference that we're putting on in about a week and a half. It's scarily close now. I think it's on the 18th, and it's a 1 day conference. It's an in-person deal. We're actually doing it on Zoom too, so it's kind of like a hybrid. But the idea is it's a 1 day thing. We got 100 people into the room, and it's called Technicals to Trading Systems, where we're taking like technical analysis of a bunch of the tools that the STA does, and we kind of moving that needle a little bit towards more systematic, algorithmic, quantitative trading side of things. And so, it's sort of like a how do you do that? And then it's a what are the interesting things going on? And then what are the best processes and techniques? And we got a whole bunch of like super experienced guys coming in as speakers. And so it's a thing where I think we've got 8 slots. I get to have a slot where I get to talk about my own trading journey and how I'm trying to turn the R factory into many of these different trading systems and implementing them, and rapid prototyping is what I'm talking about. So it's kind of like it's the idea of taking an idea from concept into live trading, prototype trading, which is very similar to what Chinlong's talking about here. The one share is to me anyway a mechanism of prototype trading where you get skin in the game by doing it, and there's real money on the line, but it's of a size where it doesn't screw you up totally, right? We're gathering data, we're building confidence, and then we're going to gauge where we can kind of crank the numbers up there. Anyway, so I'm talking about rapid prototyping and just getting ideas in, and that almost like that sort of like fail fast or move fast and break things, right? But just getting it out there, however, still following a process, still being risk managed, all of that sort of stuff, which underlying will lead to probably a course I'll put together on that. So I'm rambling again, but so the technicals, the trading system conference thing, again, it's a whole bunch of work, and it's great. I mean, I got a team behind me that's doing a bunch of the groundwork or the grunt work, and their experience in event management and all that sort of stuff. But I tell you, getting everybody lined up and on the same page and organizing the speakers and speaking to them all and then marketing it, and it's a whole minefield of stuff, which is going to be really good fun. So I'm excited that it's all happening. It's one of those things that's been getting in the way of other business, just because it's something to manage. But of course, thinking back to the exercise that we're on, it kind of links back mainly to that logical side. I mean, the whole conference is on this logical side of it. But actually, Ken, the Alpha Mind guys, Mark and Steve, they're going to be speaking at the event, and we've given them the last slot, almost intentionally, and they're bringing the whole thing home with another view on the psychological side of sort of systematic trading, and how it's ultimately it still kind of comes back to emotion. I think I spoke about that a bit on the podcast I did with them, right? Is that there's still emotions tied up to it. You're just trying to control them in slightly different ways and preset rules, but you can't quite get away from all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably most.
Who's speaking now? Did you mention him already?
Oh, I can give you guys a link. If you guys are interested, you're all invited to come. I mean, it's going to be the conference is going to be via Zoom. We've got Rob Carver, Perry Kaufman's coming in via Zoom, actually. There's a bond quant researcher for Commerce Bank called Jessica James coming. We've got Matthew Verdu he's flying in from Sydney, I think. On his way through, he's got something else he's going to go off and do. We've got Trevor Neal and Jason, I can't remember his surname. It's a complicated one. And they're going to be doing some coding in Python, sort of just during their session. We've got a panel with a bunch of a real mix of guys. The CEO of TradeStation International over here, and and Alan Dunn, he's a CTA. So he's basically a hedge fund allocator who allocates to his CTA trend following techniques. Another guy called Stephen Hode, who's been doing systematic trading using Renko charts, super successful. So anyway, there's a plethora of stuff, and I'll sneak a link into Ken or something if you guys are interested in coming along. I could probably get you on a discount or something too, or maybe I can get you in for free if you want to come on the Zoom side of things. But yeah, no, should be a fun day for sure. But I thought I had one more thing I wanted to cover. I'm just checking my notes to see if I've put something down here.
System of systems.
Yeah. System of systems is the underlying sort of backbone idea of the multiple essentially trading multiple systems, or having those multiple systems kind of down all the time. And for, from the R Factory idea is that we've got lots of these that are sort of automated or not, right? They can be fully automated, they can be somewhat systematic, they can have elements of discretion. It could just be Sonal and I jumping into the market with our rules-based discretionary hat, with our X number of years of screen time and experience, using all of the techniques that we all know and love, like from the Kata 2 challenge you're talking about, Ernie, like the SSC and the CD and Kata 2 itself, or flavors thereof, wrapping in PRX. And so anyway, all of these kind of systems fall into that system of systems idea, and then the management of that becomes the next sort of meta level of all of it. So yeah, I'll turn the ramble off now. Thank you for allowing me to empty my bowl. Great to see everybody again, and yeah, aho.
So no.
So you thought that was a ramble. Prepare yourselves. Few things. I can't get the image of Ernie scrolling through TikTok out of my mind. I mean, that's super cool. TikTok and YouTube. So thank you for that. So I'm going to try and do 3 themes, and I'll wrap in the stuff that Jeff was talking about. But as always with this group, once you start talking, you trigger things off that I wasn't planning to talk about. So in the spirit of storytelling, reflection, I'm going to use the theme of change, movement, and FOMO in terms of like my observations of this, what's currently going on in my life. So there's a lot of change happening in terms of, I've got some very good friends of mine who, well, one of them I lived with for many years, moving back to Spain. And they're in this process of putting their house up for sale, shedding stuff. They're just like, anyone that knows me, come in, take it, whatever you like. We don't do yard sales here for some reason. So whatever you like, take it. They've already booked the date that they're going to take their car across in the ferry on the 30th of July, and they're done. And it's a whole family. They're done. They're happy with their time in England. It's given them friends and experience and job and all the rest of it. But they don't want to retire in England and have Meals on Wheels. I don't know if that's a thing wherever you guys are from, but I'm not going to get Meals on Wheels delivered to my door, is what my friend is saying. So I'm watching this change and this movement, and it's a movement away. So we're left here whilst they move on. And I'm like, I'm supporting you. You've always said this. It's where you've come from. So she's Spanish, he's Portuguese. And I'm not going to transfer my need to hold on to you here with the Meals on Wheels trolley So I'll support you, but whatever I feel, I'll feel. I'll just keep my little mask. That's one. Second one, we had a fantastic catch up with Glenn Osborne yesterday. It's been a while, and I've been secretly keeping in touch with you guys when you turn up to these to the storytelling, so I feel connected. And Glenn, I would talk to through his I'm going to call it appearances, because we are in a TV world at the moment. And so Glenn, I was like, oh man, I haven't spoken to you for ages. I haven't seen you on creativity. Can we catch up? And what was an impromptu chit chat turned into a 3-hour, just generally talking. And so for anyone outside of this group that is already a trader that is finding themselves stuck and they don't know why, my massive endorsement on this guy is he's somebody that is really worth going to for coaching. Massively I think a really good investment in your time and in his, if you just book with him, because I really respect him. So in terms of change, Glenn told us about his change in terms of he and his family moved back home. So you get this, am I moving forward? Am I moving back? And we thought that was an interesting use of words. Now he had, my perception, he and his wife and family, extended family, had consciously, mindfully decided that this is a good thing for us to do because we're going to move back, and there's family and community, and it's good for his daughter to grow up with, relations nearby. But the sense of going back, Glenn said, do you know, I've never moved back in my life. Whenever I've moved houses, and I've moved many times, it's always forward. Doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's good, it's just an awareness thing. And he was observing the differences of, I think, like, they deal a lot in cash, whereas we're all into plastic. Like, you can't get a cup of coffee in London, in a lot of places in London, with cash anymore. It has to be card or, tough. No caffeine for you, buddy. So we were thinking about change and movement. And I have other good friends as well who are selling their home and moving up. So rather than, downsizing, they're upsizing. They're taking advantage of the property market to, basically invest in a place which will be worth a lot more, but they can get it at a deep discount. So all these people are moving. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of hold on here and a little bit of, should I be moving to FOMO there? And what the hell are we doing? And what have we been doing for the past 2 decades, right? Easily 2 decades. And we had this conversation on the train on the way in, which was, are we moving? I mean, really, are we moving, or are we standing still? So one perspective, Jeff's perspective, was, well, we are always moving forward because we're always thinking, learning, growing, connecting, improving, failing, falling, making a mess, cleaning it up, whatever, but forever moving. We are forever moving. And then I started thinking, my perspective, I'm sure there's some physics behind it. I'm sure somebody clever, scientific will tell me what this thing is, but I'm visualizing almost like if you had a vessel with a liquid in it. So it could be an oil or, I don't know, water. It doesn't matter how heavy the liquid, but in there you have suspended something with a weight. So it's almost like a desk toy with, that is a gravity-based desk toy, but I'm visualizing almost like a spirit level, I guess. Yeah, one of those, but in liquid. And I said to Jeff, what I see us as is the center of that thing. And if we are, say, in a train, on a plane, in a car, walking, the liquid will move, but the thing in the middle will always be grounded and present. So the question is, if you are moving forward with your plans, or if you are falling behind, if you are always present at every moment, are you missing out? So that was what I was thinking about. I was thinking about change, movement, FOMO, and just being in the moment. And if you're in the moment, am I gaining? Am I losing? Or am I just here? So that was a perspective of real life and people just moving. I'm happy for them. This is what they want to do, and so be it. So, and I hope it all works out. In terms of word of week, now I don't have a word of week. I've got a word of, I would say, word of life, a word of theme. So I'll call it the word of the quarter, and I'll pick that word as, and it's probably going to be unpopular, especially because we're in a politically correct word. It should be them. I'm just about to change it, but I'll pick the word man. So you know where I'm coming from. And with man, I'll just have a few plays on words. So man, human, AI. AI is the thing at the moment. And as we all know, and it's obviously the growth industry, and everybody's looking to AI as the solution for the future growth industry. Children, if you're going to study, go into robotics and AI. Forget that stuff. Go there. That's where the jobs are. That's what I'm hearing. Man. The other man, woman. So women and trading. Not many of them that I know of. Maybe there are many in the shadows, in the background. I don't know. But, in speaking to Glenn yesterday, I remembered I haven't been to many trading expos recently, but when I have been to a trading expo, this is what I see. I'll see if there are women in the environment, they are facilitating or administrating, welcoming, prettying the place up. And there's a couple that might talk about trading or, trading based on, strategies or representing firms. Not many. And if there's anybody else that's a female that's talking, it will be on the woo-woo psychological stuff. That mind stuff that you just got to get your mind right to trade. And it's always like, if there were 10 elements of trading that you need to know, the very last one is that mind stuff that, just get your head right and you're all good. And it's always women. And it's always annoyed the crap out of me because I'm like, why is it always women? Seriously. So I've looked at that and I've thought, I'm just going to just put that aside and embrace it, because funnily enough, that interests me, because the more I have traded, the more I believe that the output of my results are based on my mind. You get the fundamentals down, it's all to do with the mind. And that's just my belief, because of course, is it because I'm a woman? I don't know. But like I said, this is about pouring the bowl out and rambling at you. Just linking man to human and AI, I think about the plight of the man. So yes, I understand change, linking back to the previous theme. And I am a massive proponent of adaptation and growth. But the plight of the man in the world of AI. So I go back to the 1970s, is it? And I think of Flawed, the movie, and the pit traders. And yes, okay, so things came along and the pit traders lost their jobs. And thanks to technology and evolution, I get to trade at home. If that hadn't happened, and if things stayed as they were, I'd probably be in the kitchen making a cake or whatever, right? So, so there's Flawed, and then I think, well, what's AI going to do to people now? And yes, they can adapt, but there are going to be many that don't have the will or the competence or whatever else, label I can attach to it. And then I think about AI and I think, are you going to be able to truly help the man or the woman or whoever with the psychological fallout of the progress that is seemingly inevitable? So, I'm not living in a place of fear. I'm just looking at, if they lose their jobs, what happens? If they don't understand or have an interest in coding, technology-based roles, what are they going to do? There's a utility, I believe, in keeping people employed. If you don't, and if they don't learn, then what? Just saying. So we then think about, I link it back to the lesson, and the lesson, and I won't go into the lesson itself, but the two themes, and something Ken said at the beginning, ways of learning. You have knowledge base and experiential base. So yes, being through the schooling system, have the paperwork, all of that, and the knowledge. As far as, you know, as far as I didn't go off and, I don't know, become a doctor or what have you, but as far as I needed to in my profession, you got the paperwork. But then the experiential stuff, I look at that and think, well, clearly, where do I sit? And I'm all about applied knowledge. So if you have it, then you apply it. Otherwise, my theme tune, so what? What are you going to do with this? Why do you have it? What is the utility in all of this information if you believe it to be true, if you don't do something with it? Just my paradigm. So then obviously with that kind of blueprint, I am somebody who's an experiential learner, and I'll ultimately start to immerse myself in whatever I'm looking at, and then have a look at the output, and then learn and adjust, continuous improvement. So I then hear Chun Long and something you said, which you're hearing in the context of storytelling. This is not a science-based, evidence-based, you know, where's the proof thing? And I hear that all the time. And then I think I'm getting to the stage where I'm thinking, well, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the footprint. So I could wait for people to give me data, or I can produce the data with my own efforts, track it in the way that good old tortoise community teaches us to track, and then make a conclusion and evolve or not. So if this isn't making sense, I apologize, but you know, I have the stick. So in terms of experiential learning, in terms of practical applied approaches, or put in other words, excellent coping mechanisms. So with the assumption that we know what we're doing when we're going in, I don't believe we have an intention to be wrecking balls to our capital or our trading accounts or to our lives. Not, I would say, like, 99% of us don't really intend to cause harm to ourselves and, our operations. So why does it happen, and what form does it take? So you've mentioned it can be anything from moving stops or not taking stops. So fundamentally, if I look at markets and if I look at what we're doing, the underlying current is fear and greed, from which emanates emotion, which emanates actions based on beliefs. So we are doing what we take a hit to our confidence or to our self-esteem, or we might take revenge, or we might break rules, or we might not make rules, or we may want to be right. We might want to, and it goes on and it goes on. And the question is, why is this happening? Because we never went in with the intention. We know what we need to do. We may forget why we got into this once we're in the flow. But why are we doing this, and how do we explain this to people outside of us? So hence the study, hence this group is phenomenal for the insights around systems, trading techniques, quantification, measurement, adjustment. It's brilliant, and Ken is amazing at reminding us to calibrate ourselves. But fundamentally, we have a toolkit, and you can take your pick: L7c, Carter 2, pinch breakout, swing, whatever it might be. What do we have in our toolkit for psychological management, self-management? And it doesn't mean just trading. Anyone that's been with Ken for as long as we've been with Ken knows that whatever he talks about is widely applicable outside of trading. Trading is a metaphor, as far as I'm concerned. the lessons that we learn here, we take out. So what I've been doing since January, I want to say I signed up in December, but if anyone has watched any of what I've talked about, I struggle with needing to be an expert, needing to be credible. In order to be credible, I believe that people outside of me need to see proof that I'm an expert, and that expertise is evidenced by an external body saying, here's a PhD, here's a publication, here's a what have you. Mine is not much more length in the line in terms of time. I'm not a spring chicken. I want to see the results and I want to apply them now. So I want to leverage other experts for their knowledge. I want to find the tools that they use. I want to test them to see if they're useful, truthful, applicable, and things that we can integrate and use in our own practice. And frankly, if we can actually take it out of our practice and help the people around us as well. So what I've been doing since January is I signed up to a course with a lady who's based in the UK, who's developed a process which is based on principles from neuroscience, NLP, cognitive behavioral therapy, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and other therapies that I'm probably failing to mention here. I've never had therapy, so that's probably why I'm sounding like I sound now. But I believe that a drawback on therapy, and this is just a belief, so no offense to any therapists out there, but a drawback on therapy is that it takes a very long time. It can take years, perhaps. It could cost a lot of money. Difficult to prove what the output of that therapy is. Did it work? Are you feeling better? And I'm really starting to believe in the rapid side of things. Like, I want to take something and apply it and see if it's long-lasting effect for good. So with the things that I've been learning, fundamentally, the tools are a way of finding the root cause, the crux, the very thing that's causing the behavior that we don't want. And for each individual, it may be different. And it may come from somewhere in your past, and it's very likely embedded in your subconscious. So with a use of these tools that this individual is teaching, if we can use them and they have validity, then we can continue to use them for anything from self-esteem to loss to grief to what have you. There are certain areas that it's not advised to be applied to. So we're looking at proper clinical psychosis, bipolar stuff, schizophrenia, and epilepsy, on the basis that the technique, it can be used on these individuals, but they have to be in a clinical situation under medical supervision. And so I'm looking at it, and I've been working on it, and I had to keep my mouth shut. I was dying to tell you a lot last December, and I'm like, keep your mouth shut, just observe, make sure it passes the sniff test. And so far, really, really encouraging is all I'm going to say. I'm going to hope that it's like a year-long course. I'm hoping to get it done in 6 months. And there's a whole bunch of study, and I'm actually going to be doing this on people within that cohort. They're non-traders, by the way. Funnily enough, I haven't come across any traders doing this. They're all in the health world. And I'm like, Jesus, if anybody needs this, it's traders, really. So I'm hoping to get this done by July latest. It might, no worries if it's a bit longer than that. And then I'm going to, bring it to you guys and see if it's useful. I'll probably ask for some volunteers, see how that goes. But from a knowledge base and are you a book learner? Or are you a practical learner? Just on that point, one of my friends that I met yesterday called me her very own Jimmy McGill. So if you've ever watched Better Call Saul, I'm her Jimmy McGill. And I didn't know how to take that because you see, she said, as compared to Chuck, you are the Jimmy McGill. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Chuck was an expert. Chuck was an elder brother. He was a lawyer. He's an excellent lawyer, super sharp, super bright, deep mind, and highly, highly competent. Jimmy McGill was competent, a great lawyer, didn't come with the schooling from an Ivy League, highly creative, highly adaptable, big spirit, but not so credible. So I have this like big issue, chip on shoulder. Regardless of the chip on the shoulder, you know, results matter, and that's where I'm at, and this is what I'm sort of working on. So sure, anything else? Nothing else, no. I think that's it. So I hope.
Well, Rad, like I said a couple hours ago, you're under no obligation to tell stories, but you can if you'd like. In the spirit of things, I'll leave it up to you.
I don't have like anything outstanding like you guys, but I could share like quick story about that's kind of related with the thing that just Jeff S said about like how access to education, materials, resources, group, communities has changed over the years. Maybe I haven't been here for like 30 years, but I have been working at the pro firm a few years ago as an intern trader. And back then, the emphasis on the psychology was like very minimal. It's like, if you compare that to teachings of like Ken, is the focus on like psychology and like managing your emotions is like totally on different level. And it might be like one of the reasons that like many people were failing back then. And kind of like quick summary, I was one of these people failing there because my, let's say, end of very short career there was that at the very end of like the test phase of the testing period, that we had to prepare some consistent results and prepare everything to go live. I was kind of coming with very good report, as in my understanding, like slightly green, but enough to go live. And my, not mentor, I cannot say the boss, but kind of like manager back then, he was like, okay, it looks very good, but you have like done this one very red day. And I was like, okay, but you said that this is going to be like, you know, a testing day. We are going to play with the fed minutes, trade live on the event. Super valuable experience, but also like, you know, blowing your sim account. And based on that, he kind of rejected myself going live. And that kind of, I think, destroyed my remaining days there, like, you know, like blew my psychology. And it was like one of my, you know, last weeks there. So yeah, that's my very quick story. Thank you.
So just a few quick hit notes. I'll go in reverse order here. So for Sanal, even if you feel like you're not moving, the world's always moving around you and repositioning around you based on what your intentions are. So when you're in one place and working hard on intentions, it doesn't feel like you're making any motion, the whole rest of the world is adjusting around you to respond to the new you. So new things are happening. So you got to measure on a relative basis. Just keep. Your job is to do what's inside your circle, and it's the universe's job to make sense of that. So be true to you. The imagery from a couple weeks ago of mining the gold, going down to dig and where the work is, then bringing it back up to the surface through the base camp, and then putting it on the mountain for later processing to wash the gold out. You get a really nice yin-yang vision of that. And the central pivot point on the teeter-totter, on the merry-go-round, on the little tilting waveform, be the pivot point, properly placed, and part of the ongoing cycle. I want to. I'm thinking of the standard evolution slide where the monkey becomes the man, becomes the Now we got to add that. What does the AI look like, and what happens to the man in the equation in there? We got to figure out what that looks like. There's always women at the conference because traders are lonely. And notice how important that connection is between you and your desire to be expert, grounded, validated, as opposed to an adornment, an ornament, or just woo-woo. That's not just an observation, but there's some depth and a theme in there that feels like something for you to look at. I'm wondering what you think about that, but not right now. I want you to think back in your time to the exercise we did with Jeff, with the sketch, the big beautiful water ecosystem sketch, and Jeff was sitting in the hot seat, and we talked about finding our place in the ecosystem, and then who is observing you, finding your place, and who's watching the watcher, and that whole idea of disassociation and iterative perspective taking. That story still resonates with me. And I would also say that one of the things that comes out of the Army's research project on the science of storytelling is that we put science onto the effectiveness of storytelling to raise measured creativity using the gold standard of evaluating creativity with a very large N that got published in a prestigious journal. There is actual science behind the efficacy of storytelling. And then I'd say when you get some free time in between all the work you're doing, look at dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. I suspect it's strongly connected to what you're working on now. It's a subset of CBT, and it's very sound, has actual scientific validity in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder with veterans. And so it's something I'm doing too. And I'd be interested in your continuing work in that area. Yeah, for Jeff Southern, 5x8s and pencils, and I have my big fat German-made 5.5 millimeter carpenter's pencil that sketches like butter on beautiful paper. So I know all about that, and I keep mine in 5x8 card holders as a repository for sketches. I don't know what form of digital media there will be in 1,000 years, but paper and pencil will still be there. So in terms of preserving the knowledge, that's not dumb. You'll get a chance to go through the water cycle experiential learning model here at some point in the creativity course, and probably in the foundations course, that shows us how to get out of that Sisyphus pushing the unfair boulder up a hill to identifying and then aligning the water cycle. And it connects to the story about Jeff doing that at the live trading workshop, and learning how to just relax with natural forces and float while still paddling and steering on your part of the journey. The whole idea of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, and the is all about transformations. He learned the 72 transformations before he went to heaven to steal the golden peaches of immortality. And his entire genre, or his raison d'etre in the world, his methods, is about transforming from one to another faster than anybody trying to catch him. So transformations is what it is. We seem to be verbs. We're always bodies in motion, in a process of becoming. And think about the what I call the acorn trade that Jeff S. was describing with his business and a trade that starts off as an acorn, which becomes an oak tree, which creates acorns, which are gathered by squirrels and then distributed through the world and become a lot more acorns. So there's a life cycle management to that if you step back far enough and look at it. And so then the idea behind Wordley maps, which is a way to think about transformations of businesses from startups all the way through to mature businesses, and based on where you are in the life cycle, the growth is different. It looks different. The amount of growth available is different. You got to be worried about structure and resilience. And then there are natural exit points on that whole trade. It is not just a continuous trees grow to the sky forever. No, there are life cycle managements. And so part of systems thinking and ecosystem thinking is to recognize what the ecosystem is and where you are in it and where that trade is and what the appropriate questions to ask for that particular life cycle that it's in. And thus, Wordley maps is interesting, and water cycles in gardening and the acorn trade is very instructive when it comes to thinking outside of trading. The one share trading for Shunlong Lee. One share trading. That's one punch man. One steps in karate, and it's a simultaneous challenge of sticking to the plan while also trying to improve the plan. So it puts you in tension intentionally by saying, as I stick to the plan and I learn about the limits of the plan, I see opportunities to change the plan, but I'm supposed to stick to the plan that puts you precisely in the mindful moment of dynamic tension between efficiency and effectiveness, between past and future, of that mindful moment when the only thing I can do for making changes in that moment. So that's always where you're going to be as a trader. And there is no sense of certainty except from delusion that comes from, oh, now I got it figured out. No, there's always some dynamic tension and energy in there that's generating the power for work. Ernie, the hardest part of the challenge is sticking to the challenge. It's exactly the point that I would make on that one. So, hey, great stuff. I have us at 2 hours. I want to hit the tones. Would like you to listen deeply for your word for the week ahead. Share that with us, and then we'll all get on about our Easter Sunday business. I'm going to go check in on the World Championship chess match, which starts today between Ian Nepo and Ding Liren from China. Game 1. Magnus Carlsen relinquished his crown, so now for the first time in 12 years, we don't know who the champion's going to be. So I find that one, that'll be an interesting match. I think the odds favor Nepo, but the sentimental favorite is Ding because he's such a sweetheart of a person, and everybody would like to see him do well. He's everybody's younger brother. So that's everything I got, Aho. I'm going to hit the tones, ask you to listen for the word, and we'll go once around the room real quick. And here we go. In the order I see on my screen. Ernie.
Continue.
Chocolate.
Jeff B.
On point.
Red.
Reflect.
Chunlong.
Authenticate.
And Jeff Southern.
Create.
Acorns. All right, that's everything we got. You guys go have a great Easter. We'll get this thing posted in the usual spot. Just mountains and mountains of gold to sift through. You know, you generate 4 weeks of work for every week of work you do. So there you are. So don't settle for anything less than the gold. Keep refining and take good care. And we shall see you soon.
Thanks, Ken. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.